Hello, from a slightly different angle while my phone is charging and I'm about to go to work. Let me just quickly check in with Better Living Through Criticism by A.O. Scott. His, I think, 2016 nonfiction book examining criticism. And he is a professional critic for the New York Times, and um, yeah, just trying to figure out what is criticism, anyways. Is he doing it right? What gives him the right to criticize? What are Is there actually something tenable that he can actually base criticism on? Is it just all his opinion? Um, so this is the introduction, chapter 1 and chapter 2. The introduction being a very kind of platonic, I guess, kind of more of a question answer thing of doing a dialogue with, I guess, an imagined interlocutor, perhaps himself. I think it's, if I think about criticism, a lot of it is about having arguments with yourselves, thinking things through, and it's a dialogue where it's like, well, why did you want to do this? The Samuel Jackson brouhaha, where he criticized the Avengers while also saying nice things, and Samuel Jackson clapping back at him on Twitter, telling his followers to say, like, he's really crappy at his job. We should find him a job, something that he's good at. So saying that, he's a bad critic, and that, like, how dare he criticize this work, and that he didn't, have any basis. Um, so yeah, and like, what is criticism? Is it just shitting all over stuff? Is it we get into chapter 1, the whole idea of, like, the critic is a failed artist. That's the criticism. It's like a failed, embittered artist who is decided to just, those who can't criticize those who can. That idea, and him saying very much no, actually, well, a lot of the great critics in the world have also been artists. Someone like T.S. Eliot or Jean-Luc Godard is probably a lot of the French New Wave guys started off as critics and then went on to make movies, which in some ways were reflections on criticisms on the movies they had watched, and just internal dialogues in between. He brings up Harold Bloom and the kind of the age of his idea of that, that one generation of artists do something, and then the next generation reacts, criticizes, misreads perhaps what's come before them, and creates their own art on top of that. This is not like where the artist is somebody who is an isolated romantic figure in a garret who just comes out of the stuff with whole cloth. No, they are someone who is reacting to the art that came before them in a very real way, creating their own kind of criticism. It's like one of those, if you don't like a book or a movie or something, like, well, then make your own, which is implicitly kind of a criticism of it. But he also does kind of the idea that what a critic is also got to do with being engaging, entertaining, thought-provoking, is sort of an art form in of itself. It's not a highly valued art form. It's a strange art form in that it depends on the existence of another piece of art for it. Though you could say that about a lot of art that gets created, that it's built up in relation to what has come before it too. And, like, while you might be able to enjoy something on a certain level, the more you know of, like, all the stuff that came before it, like maybe someone like Shakespeare, like, you can enjoy Shakespeare on his own, but you can get a greater appreciation of Shakespeare if you go back and see all the stuff that Shakespeare was reacting to, modifying, all that sort of stuff. Yeah, that kind of idea. Sorry, I've got my little Havy beneath me. He's being my writing and videoing buddy. No, chapter 2, we're getting a little bit more. We get into Kant, the eye of the beholder, and Immanuel Kant, who critique of pure reason, all that sort of stuff. He came up with the ideas of, of that, that a lot of art aesthetic experience could be divided into Kant's great for his dividing things up. The ideas of dividing things up the into the agreeable, which is sort of basically like, okay, this is just fun, pleasurable, something that, I may enjoy, but you might not. It's like, big deal. That's not, that's not, that isn't particularly, it's the base level of aesthetics. It's not even aesthetics. It's just sort of sense. It's like, okay, this is something that I enjoy, but you might not enjoy. Maybe it's a superhero movie where you go like, oh, you might not be into superhero movies. If you're not, then fine. But, you shouldn't you should just enjoy it for as fun's sake. You shouldn't, get into all high-minded falutin stuff like A.O. Scott made the mistake of doing, much to Samuel L. Jackson's ire. The next is the beautiful, where we're getting into kind of a higher level where there is some sort of abstract, the beautiful idea that goes beyond that. It's the beautiful is something that is a property in itself and independent of the object, that is a higher thing, which if is self-evident and is universal, and stuff like that. And then the good, which is sort of the more moral, the moral state of things, of kind of a sublime kind of idea. There's beauty, but then there's the good. These two top, beautiful and the good, being kind of top layers, which have got to do with art. This is art versus disposable pop art, pop stuff. And so, and he called this is the universal subjectivity, is what Kant called it, which sounds like a contradiction in terms, something that's universal but is also subjective. That idea that there's the universal properties of the beautiful and of the good that are universal but are experienced subjectively, something that we can feel, and that we all feel. And now someone called Edmund Burke, who wrote his The Sublime and the Beautiful, another kind of artistic philosopher kind of guy, about 100 years earlier, and he made the example that, well, if I showed you a beautiful bird to 100 people, they would all, of course, immediately say, yes, that's a beautiful bird. Now, A.O. Scott makes a point like, well, our modern mind cannot sort of wrap our minds around the fact that anyone would find anything universally beautiful, that it would be, that we immediately, our minds go to the idea of like, well, what 100 people? Is it 100 dudes? Is it 100 higher class ornithologists, or is it like 100 farmers? What's the makeup? Is this something to do with like what birds would people of the 18th century find beautiful that today we'd be like versus like, oh, a lot of people love crows today, where crows at the time maybe not seen as the beautiful. So there's a lot of calling into question of that idea of universality. But he does say, he's struggling with, I'm not all the way through this chapter, is the idea that if there isn't universal subjectivity, if there isn't something where you can say, well, this is beautiful, and these are the reasons why, and that's, as a critic, I'm going to point them out to you to make you agree with me. If there isn't universal subjectivity, then what's the point of a critic if there's not some kind of something that you can point out and highlight to show that your opinion isn't opinion, but is a universal truth, that this is the beautiful or the good in something, or that this only rises to the level of the agreeable, of sensation, that of fleeting sensation, which is going to appeal to some people but not to everyone. But this is a piece of art that has something that will last. And if there isn't any universal subjectivity, if there isn't any the beautiful and the good, then how do we explain artists who have transcended their time and their particular niche, and that do seem to carry on? Someone like Shakespeare, or maybe Homer, or stuff like that. Though, I mean, I'm sure people could argue that, well, no, that these are very constructed grates that we've constructed in our world, and as we slowly pull down that construction, and maybe the classics get taken off of our transmission of the canon, our school system, our educational system, that those greats will fade away into the background, and a lot of people would bemoan that fact. So, and I think about this in relative terms of just very minor little dust up in the last little bit of critic online, talking about how that the Booker Prize is no longer relevant, that it's all about box ticking, that they're not picking what I think would be considered a Kantian kind of, which he would probably hate. This is Steve Donahue of the Kantian, universals of the beautiful and the good. It's like, no, we're now looking at stuff that is those demographic boxes of like, gender or sexuality or stuff like that, that we're using that as our barometers for what is the top works that should be read. Yeah. Yeah, so that is where I am so far in the Better Living Through Criticism by A.O. Scott. I will leave it there. More videos later.